You are such a genuine gem. Thank you for clicking on my video. I'm Brooke McKenna, but today's case is about a husband who killed his wife and then walked free after only 10 years. This is a case of injustice, even though it is solved. Everything about this case was strange from the very beginning, and investigators knew the truth but didn't have enough evidence to prove it. Now, I also want to thank our sponsor, Ana Luisa. I have talked about their jewelry on my channel before because I think they come out with such wonderful pieces that are also such good quality, and they have a very sustainable business plan as an entire business. And so when they reached out again, I knew I wanted to work with them because seriously, the stuff that they had sent me in the past, I have been wearing for months nonstop. I never take them off, and they never tarnish. They never show any signs of wear at all, and they're just really high quality, which is what I love. I'm wearing them today. Both of these necklaces are from them. Both of these sets of earrings are from them. I love that they're focused on being a more sustainable and ethical brand, and they also create smaller batches so that there is no waste in what they're creating. And it also means some of your pieces will be more unique because there's not a ton to be sold. But right now they're having a 15% off for Mother's Day, and I think it's truly the perfect gift to give your mother. In fact, I got my mom one of these necklaces that say Mama on it, and I just think it's so beautiful. She absolutely loved it when she opened it. It was such a surprise for her. But if you would like 15% off any of the products on Ana Luisa's site, just go to analuisa.com/McKennaMD. Now let's get back to the story. So it was 2006 in Philadelphia, and the Robb family lived in Forest Road in Upper Merion, and this was Rafael and Ellen and their 12-year-old daughter, Olivia. Now, this couple had actually met through an online dating service and were dating for about 3 years. Now, Ellen Gregory was much younger than Rafael, but they had this connection and they didn't stop dating until they got married in 1990. And so it was only 4 years after this that they had their daughter, Olivia, and it was just kind of like the progression of a regular couple, just dating, marriage, kids, while they had their careers as well. Rafael was a professor at the University of Pennsylvania, and Ellen had gone to school at the College of Textiles and Science and was once working in sales at Hanes Hosiery. But at this point, she was spending so much time raising Olivia, and she actually became a full-time stay-at-home mother just to give Olivia all of the attention that she wanted to give her, and being a mother was one of her biggest passions anyway. In fact, when Ellen was younger, her nickname was Little Mother, because that is exactly what she would try to do to all of her siblings. She had, I believe, 2 younger brothers, and she had a single mother, so she kind of helped her mother raise her brothers. Ellen's father had died when she was younger, and so even while Ellen was at college, she was working 3 different jobs to send money home to her family so her brothers could, pay for college so they could just get, the regular necessities, and so her mother didn't have to work so hard. Ellen took care of anyone in her life that she cared about, no matter how hard she had to work to do so. But Ellen also had a very fun side to her too, and she was definitely an extrovert. She had lots of friends who were always going with her to parties. She was like that one person that always knew where the nearest party was, so they were just asking her, going with her. She was always the life of the party, and we always hear that victims will go into a room and light up the room. But Gary, her brother, said that even though it was easy for her to do so, that's not what she wanted. She could be the center of attention, but often she put it on other people because she was just that kind of warm soul that just wanted other people to shine and didn't want that attention. Ellen was still very close to her family and her brothers, even though she had one of her own at this point, and she appeared to be a wonderfully caring woman who would have done anything for anybody. Yet her life was brutally taken on December 22nd, and the police department would receive a phone call. This was from the Robb family that afternoon. Now, this was not a call to 911. This was actually to the police department, which was kind of strange, but this also meant that there was no recorded 911 call. However, it has been revealed that Ellen's husband, Rafael, was the one on the other side of the phone, and he was saying he had just gotten home from work and found his wife murdered in the kitchen. He was asked if he was sure that she was killed, and he said yes, that her head was cracked open. And when he was asked if anyone else was in the home, he said that there was a back door with a broken window, basically in the glass of the door, but that there was no one inside. Now, he was told to go out front, wait for the police to get there, and shortly after they did. When they arrived and looked inside, they realized that this was one of the most horrific crime scenes they had ever been to. No matter how many accidents or bodies they had seen, nothing compared to this. Ellen had been 1 day away from her birthday and turning 50 years old, yet now she was found dead from her injuries and left on the kitchen floor, to the point of being unrecognizable. This is how bad she was beaten, and there was blood splatter all over the place, on all of the walls around her, the ceiling, and everywhere. It was so much blood that it actually seeped into the kitchen grout. Investigators believe that Ellen had been shot in the face at close range due to her face being left concave and there being basically a bowl of blood. On the kitchen table nearby, there were wrapped presents as well as more wrapping paper and open presents that had yet to be wrapped, because this was the day before Christmas break and she was trying to get everything ready for Olivia for Christmas. This was a super busy time for Ellen. She had her birthday, she had Christmas, all wrapped into one, and she just always wanted to make it the best possible time for her daughter. The table was found to be facing a wall, and so investigators believe she was wrapping the presents at the time of the attack and she didn't even see the killer coming towards her. They also believe that it had happened that morning, that earlier morning, but investigators first wondered if this was a burglary due to the door being broken out. There was a window right next to where would be the doorknob, and it was broken out as someone had reached in and unlocked the door. So they truly believe this could have been a burglary that went horribly wrong. Like maybe they believed nobody was inside and then they found Ellen and thought that she would rat them out, or she had seen their face and that's why they killed her. They believe this might be an easier case to solve as long as they could find the burglar. But the odd thing was, when investigators got there, they found a dog that was not in a cage. It was actually roaming free near Rafael, the husband, and it was completely free of blood. Rafael hadn't taken the dog with him, and he had been inside the home, but this dog had no bloody paw prints. There was also no paw prints of blood inside the home near the crime scene, as though the dog had been in the kitchen or anywhere near Ellen, which was quite strange. Most dogs kind of walk aimlessly around the house. They don't know what they're stepping on, and especially if one of their owners is laying there, they're more likely to go up to them, walk in the blood, and then run around the house, making it messy everywhere. But there was no paw prints anywhere, and this would be only one of the many strange pieces in this case. While her husband Rafael was brought down to the station for questioning, because the spouse in a murder is often looked at as the first suspect. But as this occurred, another man showed up at this home. Now, he immediately got out of the car. He went up to the police officers, the crime scene tape. He was immediately asked who he was. He went on to say that he was there to pick up a woman who lived there. And Gary was then told that his sister was dead. He was then asked one question: did his brother-in-law own a gun? At this point, 12-year-old Olivia, Ellen and Rafael's daughter, got off the school bus, walked up to her home to greet her mother and father, only to be met with police officers who had no idea she existed or that she was coming home. And they quickly ushered her away from the property, and her uncle Gary, Ellen's brother, then took her to one of her friend's houses down the street to stay while they figured everything out. He then returned back to his sister's home to watch her body be carried out. At this point, Rafael was answering every question the investigators had for him. They mainly were asking him where he was that morning, why he wasn't at work or wasn't home with his wife, and Rafael said that he left at around 8:30 a.m. and he was taking Olivia. And this is when Olivia told her mother goodbye for what she didn't know would be the last time. He then went and dropped Olivia off at school, and then he said he went to run some errands. First, he went to a grocery store to pick up some fruit. This was in Chinatown, which was kind of near their home. Then he stopped at Wawa for a soda and proceeded to go to work at Penn University, but he wasn't going to stay. He was just going to drop off some graded papers so they could be inputted before Christmas break, and then he was going to go home. He had a pretty much, I think it was kind of like a loose schedule, especially around this time. I'm not sure if classes were over yet or what, but he didn't need to stay for a long period. So after that, then he was going to go home, and that's when he said that he found his wife dead. He went over to touch her face, knew that he could not help her, and he went upstairs to find their dog. He heard barking coming from Olivia's bedroom, and they had a little Shih Tzu dog named Copper who was barking inside Olivia's room, and Rafael said that this was super odd because normally Copper just had kind of reign of the house. The dog could just go anywhere he wanted. However, he was now locked in a bedroom, and Rafael said he at first thought Olivia maybe came home early, ditched school, walked home, and that is why she took the dog into her bedroom with her. But when he opened the door, it was just Copper and no sign of Olivia. After that, he claimed that he headed back downstairs to call the police, but then he needed to go pee, so he went towards the downstairs bathroom, but that is when he noticed the downstairs back door and the window pane broken out of it, the shards of glass on the floor, and then he proceeded to call police. Now, Rafael didn't say why he called the police department over 911, but investigators hadn't heard of anyone doing this before, especially someone who didn't have a connection, to a detective or somebody within the police department that they wanted to reach specifically before calling 911, because no one there knew Rafael Robb. But many in the community did, because he was a well-respected professor and he was extremely smart. He was wealthy, so investigators decided to go to the university to find if anybody had seen Rafael there that day. And many actually said that they had seen him drop off the grades and then leave. So their next stop was to go to Wawa to see if he actually went and picked up this soda. And surveillance cameras were actually there, and they showed that he had picked up a soda that morning, and his alibi really appeared to check out. At this time, Ellen's brother Gary was not, brought in for questioning or anything. They spoke to him briefly, but he was not a suspect, and so he decided to get a hotel room with his wife Kim to stay nearby where the investigation was happening. And Gary was trying to keep a positive outlook this whole time. He was telling his wife that, they had to find some way to turn this tragedy into a triumph, and he wanted to keep his sister alive in some way, but he just didn't know exactly how yet. In the meantime, Gary decided that he was going to try to get more information out of Rafael, and with the help of the police and a recording device that they gave him, he went to talk to Rafael. They actually met at the hotel parking lot and they began talking. Gary went in for a hug to Rafael, and after this hug, Gary said, "If I ever had any doubts, they were gone. When I put my arms around him, there was no feeling there, and I knew he killed Ellen." But with an alibi confirmed and evidence showing that this was a break-in, investigators didn't want to believe that Rafael was innocent, but that's what they were being shown. So that's when they began to look even closer. And once they did, things became much clearer because the crime scene itself had odd elements to it, one of which was that the dog was clean. But investigators realized that if this was a robber and it was a burglary gone wrong, no robber would take the time to put the dog away before or even after he killed someone, especially if it was a, spur of the moment. He had no idea if someone was home and he killed her because she saw his face. Unless, of course, this robber knew there was a dog, entered the home, put the dog away before killing Ellen. But would they have time to do so before Ellen knew that they were there? Because she seemed to have stayed right in that spot where she was working. And she also would have had possibly a little more time to hide or call the police, but she didn't do either. And if this murder was purely Ellen being in the wrong place at the wrong time when this robber broke in, why would it have been so brutal? The back door window was broken from the outside. There were shards of glass on the floor on the inside, but the problem was they were in perfect condition, these shards. It appeared that no one had walked on them, and a burglar would have had to if he broke through the glass, grabbed the doorknob, unlocked it, opened the door, and walked in. There was no way to get around it without crushing it or dragging it through the house, and it didn't appear that was done either. The medical examiner then found that Ellen's body showed no bullet and no signs of actually being shot. Now, this is what investigators thought her original cause of death was, but the medical examiner was telling them that this would actually been done by a blunt force sharp instrument, and Ellen had been bludgeoned to death. She had been hit over and over again to the point where her blood matter was showing, and it was classified as an overkill due to the forcefulness of the actual crime and it being much more forceful than was necessary. It was believed the murder weapon was a long, thin object, and that this was also a rage killing or a crime of passion, and this made much more sense as to how the blood splatter was everywhere on the kitchen floor, on the kitchen cabinets, on the ceiling, everywhere. But it also meant that this was much less likely to be a random killing. But if her husband hadn't done this, then who would have wanted to kill her and have done it in such a rage? Investigators knew that they had the right guy, but his alibi during this murder was getting in the way. Investigators thought it was that morning, and people had said they saw him out and about. However, then they theorized, what if this murder actually happened a little bit further in the morning than they once thought? That is when they went to the Chinatown grocery store that Rafael said that he had gone to get some fruit, and they actually knew him well. He was a regular there, but no one had seen him there that day of the murder, and I don't believe that there was any surveillance cameras to show he was there or not. With this new time period of the possible murder, Rafael was arrested on January 8th of 2007 for first-degree murder of his own wife. However, due to the medical examiner identifying that this was a rage killing, this meant that it was being looked at as having no premeditation. Also meaning that he could not be tried for first-degree murder, and this was going to be classified as voluntary manslaughter. Now, you may be thinking, well, as long as he's in custody, right? Well, yes, except for the fact that voluntary manslaughter has a much smaller sentence.
Now, a University of Pennsylvania professor is behind bars without bail, and he's charged with her murder. Prosecutors say Rafael Robb's story just doesn't add up. Sean Safvi is executive editor of the Daily Pennsylvanian, that is the student newspaper at the University of Pennsylvania. Sean, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
Professor Robb is now on leave. What's been the reaction on campus to his arrest?
The average student at Penn has really had nothing but positive things to say about him. Students have described him as being kind. They've really had positive things to say about him. And students are surprised, to say the least. But quite honestly, classes have started yesterday, and students really haven't had an opportunity to digest the whole story just yet.
But would it be fair to say he was pretty well known and well liked, and obviously he had a fairly prestigious position?
Oh, it was a very prestigious position. He was an expert, as we know, on game theory. He was well liked. He taught several classes in the undergraduate economics department. But yeah, very well respected, very well liked.
Before the trial, Rafael actually confessed to killing his wife, but he said they were having an argument about where Ellen wanted to take Olivia for Christmas break, and he lost it. He grabbed a chin-up bar that was nearby, and he began hitting her with it. He said he then noticed that he had bloody clothes. He put these in a trash can in Chinatown and got rid of them. But once he confessed, he was also given a guilty plea, saying that if he pled guilty, it would only be to manslaughter. He did so. And on November 26th, that same day, he officially resigned from being a professor at this university. His sentence was about to be much lower than everyone hoped, all because they believed that it wasn't premeditated. You see, investigators didn't yet realize that Rafael taught game theory to his students and had published tons of papers on this very subject of using mathematical discipline to analyze human decisions through economics. Now, this is kind of a big concept that is a little hard to comprehend at some points, but basically Rafael was known to be the expert on this subject that used risks and rewards and predicting the knowledge of others to make the best possible outcome for yourself. You basically think moves ahead of everybody else, and you are constantly seeing many different paths of the way you can go to get what you want in the end. Basically, you leave no stone overturned when you are making a plan, and you know exactly what you were doing before you even try to do it. Now, something that I found was interesting was the prisoner's dilemma, which is an example of this. This was testing to see if people will go against each other, even if it benefits both of them to work together. This experiment put two different prisoners in separate cells where they could not communicate, and they were both going to get 1 year if they said nothing at all about the crime that they allegedly committed. Now, they were also offered a bargain at this point, and they were told that if they gave up the other guy, they would go free. The person who confessed would go free, but the other guy would get 3 years. However, either of them could do this, and the other one would get 3 years and they would go free. It could be either one. But if they both confessed, they would each get 2 years. Obviously, the best decision for both would to not say anything and both just get 1 year. But the best decision for an individual would be to rat out the other guy and get nothing. However, they couldn't plan to see if one was going to confess and blame the other guy, or if the other one was. So they basically had to make that decision on their own without consulting with the other person. It was predicted that the fear of the other person confessing and them going free and you getting 3 years would make both of the prisoners blame each other. They would go from 1 year to 2 years just out of fear and self-interest, because they could possibly be the one in prison while the other person was walking free if they didn't. But how does this correlate to Rafael and Ellen? Well, Rafael was, like I said, most likely to think through everything he did before he did it. He knew all possible outcomes to his plans and decisions, and he knew his destination before he even started down that path, and he knew exactly where he was going to end up. That's just how his brain works. This is how he learned to live and think, and it was a part of him. So some people began to think that, just like this game theory, this prisoner's dilemma, Rafael sacrificed his own wife for the greater good of himself, even though his wife had no idea she was playing this game. And if this was really the case, then it was definitely premeditated. The problem was, this was hard to prove. Now, from the very beginning of their relationship, Ellen's family did not like Rafael. They believed he was strange, he was quiet, he was rude, he said things at the wrong time, he didn't have common courtesy, and they would try to tell him about, different things, kind of help him out with saying, that's rude, you shouldn't do that, and he didn't care because he believed he was smarter than everyone in the room, and he wouldn't even talk about his work because he told everyone that they wouldn't understand it. They all tried to get Ellen away from Rafael at one point or another, but Ellen would say she loved him, and so there was nothing they could really do about it. At the same time, why wouldn't Ellen love him? Because he was love bombing her with expensive vacations, luxuries, dinners, sweet words. He was taking care of her, and she was used to being the one taking care of everyone else, so this was something that was just so incredible for her. But what often happens is that this love bombing ends once you actually enter this toxic relationship. They know that they have you, and you are given nothing all of a sudden, and it's nothing like what you once experienced, but in the back of your mind you're thinking, well, they're not a bad person because they've done it before, so eventually they'll do it again. I just have to wait till they get back to that place. And that's the thing. They can't get back to that place because everything they showed you before was a lie, was a manipulation tactic to get you where you are. You are left feeling needy, wanting more, and that will just never be something that person can give you. Oftentimes, these toxic relationships even get worse after that, because not only are they giving you the bare minimum and you're accepting that, they're going to stop even giving you the bare minimum. That's what Ellen began to see, and she was pregnant with Olivia. By this point, she gave birth to her without him in the room because he was late. And then he made her feel bad because she had had a girl and not a boy. And he said that he had wanted a son and that it was her fault that they didn't have one. After that, Ellen mostly took care of Olivia and stayed away from Rafael. They slept in separate bedrooms. They stopped going to events together. And then 9 years into their marriage, when Olivia was 6 years old, they went to visit Israel for Rafael's job. This is also where he had come from. And Ellen's family members would call her all the time to talk to her, and they would often hear Rafael yelling at her, calling her names in the background. He didn't even care that she was on the phone with somebody. Years were going by, and it was getting even worse, and she started to speak in code, telling her family members how bad it was if Rafael was around and could hear her. When they arrived back in the United States, Ellen told her brother Gary that Rafael had become emotionally abusive but was never physical, and it was things like him coming in to go pee in the sink while she was cleaning the bathroom, just being super disrespectful, and it only got worse from there, but no one knew how bad it really was inside those walls. The trial began in 2007, and everyone knew that the maximum term given for manslaughter was 20 years. So that's what they were hoping for, at least 20 years. Yet even that would not be given. And Rafael told the court that he and Ellen were in an argument over taking Olivia on this trip, and Ellen pushed him, so he lost it and bludgeoned her to death. That it was basically Ellen's fault for pushing him into murdering her. He said he dropped the murder weapon, went out to the garage where he realized he was covered in blood. He then went into the kitchen, took off his clothes, went upstairs to use baby wipes to get off all the rest of the blood, and then discarded everything. Judge Paul W. Tressler said that it was the worst physical bludgeoning he had ever seen, yet he decided that 10 years was enough instead of 20, and that Rafael could get out on parole in 5 years for bludgeoning his wife. But Rafael Robb had done much more to his wife than just kill her. Prior to her death, he had tortured her, he had abused her for years prior. Neighbors had seen that something was off. They never went anywhere together, and Rafael always drove the fancy cars. Ellen was stuck at home with this not so fancy car to get her and Olivia around. She was completely in charge of her daughter and could barely even get her around in this old beat up car. They said that their home kind of looked like the show home until they left for Israel. They came back. They had been renting it out through this time period, and these renters had completely destroyed it. And after this, Rafael said he wasn't going to pay for it. He wasn't going to fix it. They just had to live there in that mess. And Ellen completely broke after this. Now, hearing this, I believe that in a huge way, this is what Ellen was using as a way to cope with her abusive marriage, and that her home appearing to be normal, at least to the outside world, was what was keeping her going. And that was suddenly ripped from her too. Friends of Ellen said that they were trying to talk her into leaving Rafael, but she would confide in them saying that she had thought about it, but Rafael always said he would take Olivia and basically would never let her see her again. And Olivia meant everything to her mother. Another one of her friends said that 3 months before her murder, he invited her to a birthday party, and Ellen called him crying, saying that she was too embarrassed to go because she had a black eye from her husband. The emotional abuse had turned physical. Ellen slowly began to tell others her secret, and that was that she feared her husband. She said he was controlling, cold, he didn't let her have any access to the money. He spent all of her savings that she had, and he had also become even more emotionally abusive, and the physical abuse wasn't just the once. She said the problem was he was going to take away Olivia, but also she had no money to fight him with any of this, and he had so much. And so when Ellen's brother Gary heard about this, he told his sister, who had always taken care of everyone, that he was going to take care of her. Gary said that he would pay for Ellen to get a divorce attorney, and that she was going to be able to get back on her feet and have Olivia. They looked for a divorce attorney together. Once they did, they realized that they could possibly get $4,000 a month for spousal support. Ellen appeared so much happier at this point in her life. She was looking less depressed. To her friends, there was a light in her eyes again. She was that extroverted party girl, just like coming back into herself. And Gary had also said he was going to come pick her up for her birthday, her and Olivia, so they could go back to his house, spend time with his family, and also make sure she was safe and supported. Instead, he showed up to a crime scene that day. It was then believed that Rafael killed Ellen because he didn't want to pay that monthly money, and he wasn't going to let her take his daughter. Because again, to Rafael Robb, this was all a game, and that would mean he was losing. But only 5 years later, in March of 2012, Rafael filed a request saying he wanted to spend the rest of his sentence in a Philadelphia halfway house. And This was basically a rehabilitation program, and he was actually not granted this, but it didn't matter because 7 months later he was granted early parole anyways, and he'd only served those 5 years. However, this was stopped by the Ellen family, who made a huge scene about it, and they fought for not only Ellen, but every victim of domestic abuse, and they said he should have been at least kept in there to serve his 10 years. By 2013, Ellen's family moved to file a civil wrongful death lawsuit for Olivia to get compensation and to make sure that Rafael had no money when he got out of prison. Because it was believed that Rafael had millions. And so the 12-year-old Olivia was now 20 years old, and she was going to take the stand to testify against her father. For the first time, she was seeing him. She testified that she didn't believe her father really did it for a while. She said she had suspicions, but he was also her father. And she said the day of the murder, a detective never told her her mother was dead. He just came up to her crying, and that's when she figured it out herself. She said that Ellen was her best friend, and that every morning when she wakes up, she thinks about her mother's murder, and every time she meets someone new, she wishes that Ellen could have met them. Olivia faced her father, her mother's killer, that day, but said she never wants to see him again. A childhood friend of hers named Brooke actually said that she would often go to the Robb family home, and that there was always yelling, fighting, dishes breaking, and it was bad enough that Brooke would call her mom to come pick her up and ask to go home. Olivia said that she was scared of her father because he always had this violent temper. Now, Rafael went on the stand and he was asked, "You're a killer and a liar, Mr. Robb, aren't you?" To which he responded, "Killer? Yes. Liar too, yes." Admitting everything. Then it was revealed by Olivia's lawyer that there could have been evidence of premeditation in Ellen's murder after all. You see, detectives had found a full-body protective hazmat suit, as well as a face mask, in the trunk of Rafael's car that was in the garage. Now, the suit was wrapped up as though it hadn't been used, but apparently there was a wrapping of another suit that was not there. So the lawyer believes that Rafael had two suits, one that he used on himself that day to make sure that no blood got on him. This would mean that he would have had to put it on prior to the murder and him beating his wife, which would be premeditation. There was also a trail of blood that led to the garage and then just abruptly stopped, as if he took the suit off there and disposed of it. This had never come out before the civil lawsuit, and even though this news was possible evidence that this was premeditation and it shocked everybody, nobody knew if they should believe it or not, it didn't mean that he could be tried again for Ellen's murder because of double jeopardy, so it didn't matter anyway. It was also found that during the actual murder trial, right before, Rafael had been trying to reach his daughter, his 12-year-old daughter, whose mother he had just killed, and he was asking her for photos, and when she didn't answer, he wrote her a letter saying, "Hi honey, just to make it easier for you, I am enclosing a self-stamped, self-addressed envelope. All you have to do is print out pictures of you, make a copy of your report card, enclose them in the envelope, and drop it in a mailbox. In return, you will have your holiday gift coming to you in no time. I'd hate to delay sending you the gift, but I won't do so unless I get these items. Remember also that I will be shipped out of the area soon, so if you don't send the item within a day or two, I won't get them for months, if at all. Won't the love of money propel you into action? Love and kisses, Dad." It was believed that Rafael didn't care about his daughter. He was just trying to look like a good father to get a lesser sentence in court. Olivia never sent him anything, never wrote to him, spoke to him at all, but now, at this civil lawsuit, she was awarded $124 million in compensation. This was to come from her father. But on January 10th, 2007, after his 10-year sentence was completed, Rafael was released, and Ellen's family protested, and reporters were on the scene, and Gary said, "He can't simply go back into society unfettered while the memory of my sister fades into the distance." It was then said that Rafael moved to Pittsburgh, and he also hadn't paid his daughter, and he told his probation officer that he wanted to go to Israel that summer. And so the request was put in. But no one in Ellen's family were told about this. And the problem was he was supposed to go to court to make sure he was going to pay the millions that he was expected to during the time that he was trying to flee the country. Once the family knew and tried to stop it, Rafael withdrew the request and didn't try to. In 2017, during an interview that Rafael said he didn't want to be recorded, Rafael said that he was thinking about doing a long series of interviews or making a book or a movie. He said that Ellen seemed motivated in life by emotional things people value, like love and family, and he would look at the world from a place outside of all of that, a vantage where normal human feelings are puzzling. It turned out Rafael had $3 million in total and ended up giving 75% of that to his daughter. But the home that Ellen was killed in was up for sale in 2009. Since this murder, Ellen's family has created a foundation which is called Every Great Reason, which is Ellen's initials, and this is for domestic abuse and violence. And I think they've done such a wonderful job at keeping her story alive and helping others in this situation. And I will leave the website down below if you would like to check it out, because I think it's such a wonderful thing that they've done in Ellen's memory. And I want these cases to be something that if someone in these situations hears it and something makes them think that's how I'm being treated, they can get out of these situations, that they can think, wow, I am better than how this person is treating me. I deserve better. And they get out and they ask for help far before it gets this bad. It can be scary, it can be hard, it will take a lot of strength, but trust me, what you're going through already takes a lot of strength, meaning you are already strong. And so it is possible to do this, to get through this, and I wish that had been the case for Ellen too. I really hope that you learned a little bit about Ellen. I hope I did okay on her case, and I will leave a domestic violence hotline down below if you need it. And if you would like to check out any of Ana Luisa's pieces, go to analuisa.com/McKennaMD and you can get 15% off. So don't ever forget to speak up. Your voice is powerful enough, and I love you to absolute pieces. Okay? Bye.